the rapper in the past month, and the church's lawyers are currently writing a contract to send to Kanye. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
A wreck clearing now on the 60 westbound before the 605. A big rig and another vehicle involved, and they've cleared things out of lanes off to the right shoulder. You're seeing a little slowdown still on the 405 southbound. That's heavy from the 101 down to Getty Center. Work zone underway in Sylmar, 210 westbound between Hubbard Street and the 5.
Need an accident attorney by your side? All you got to do is call the Accident Guys.
Injured in a car accident or at work? The Accident Guys have helped over 5,000 injured clients with an impressive winning record.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers got a strong performance from LeBron James in a 17-point win over Portland. LeBron had 31 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds. The Lakers are 6-2 in their last 8 games. The Clippers lose by 13 at Utah. The anti-Semitic documentary that got Kyrie Irving in trouble is still available on Amazon. Despite public pressure, Amazon CEO Andy Jassy said he is not removing the controversial film from the company's website. Rams defensive end Aaron Donald has a high ankle sprain and will not play in Sunday's home game against Seattle. This will be the first game Donald has missed due to an injury in his 9-year career. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by MVP Accident Attorneys. When it comes to your settlement, we're slam dunk. Call 833-MVP-WINS or check their website at themvp.com for a free case review.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call on me, your MVP.
You ready? Excuse me. Now that I have your attention, may I ask you this question? Why do you believe police brutality continues to exist in this country? Do you believe it to be a systemic problem, or should we judge police misconduct on a case-by-case basis? And what's your opinion on the best course of action to solve the problem? Well, you have come to the right place. You're listening to LA's all-new progressive talk radio station. Of the people, by the people, for the people.
Hey, I sure appreciate that.
It's KBLA Talk 1580. And we got you covered round the clock. Racism, we got you. Progressive politics, we got you. Health and wellness education, we have you covered.
We're going to have to put it back in the hands of the people.
A black-owned and operated, evidence-based alternative radio station for progressive, open-minded people like you and me.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Welcome home, LA. We're all in this together.
Let's get it on.
It's KBLA Talk 1580, broadcasting from the heart of LA's Leimert Park. We've got a lot to talk about.
We are going to have to fight. We're going to have to struggle. We're going to have to struggle relentlessly to bring about some peace.
I'm Tavis, Smiley. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Our phone number 1-800-920-1580, 1-800-920-1580. That's Club Nouveau, and they are going to join us in case you did not hear in our first or second hours. We started today's program by announcing some of the lineup for our Welcome Home Mayor-elect Karen Bass event here in historic Leimert Park. on Saturday, December the 10th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We'll be joined that day by the mayor-elect, the history-making mayor-elect of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, the first woman, and the second African-American. I had the honor of working for the first black man to lead this city, Tom Bradley. Karen Bass, only the second African-American, and the first woman in the history of this city to be our chief executive. We're celebrating Karen Bass with this Welcome Home Mayor-elect Karen Bass event here in Leimert Park, Saturday, December 10th, once again, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. She will join us live on stage at 11 a.m. straight up. 11 a.m. straight up on Saturday, December the 10th. You can see Mayor-elect Karen Bass on stage for this free public event. A bunch of folk going to come out, and you should be one of them. Come out, bring your family, bring your friends. There'll be food trucks. There'll be entertainment, including performances by Club Nouveau and KBLA and Brian McKnight. We announced all three of those names just this morning. Brian McKnight, KBLA, Club Nouveau. Going to be a great day here in Leimert Park, Saturday, December 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Karen Bass on stage exactly at 11 for this Welcome Home Mayor-elect Karen Bass event. We are excited around here at KBLA Talk 1580 to be hosting this event, celebrating our new mayor, and look forward to having you join us here in Leimert Park, specifically right in the intersection of Leimert and Vernon. And for those around the country who want to see and participate in this great event, we'll be live streaming this as well. The station will on all of our platforms for you to see us celebrate this black woman who's made history in L.A., and not just being a woman and not just being black, but the first person in this country who's run for high office who had to withstand a $100 million plus assault against her from a white male billionaire, but he couldn't pull it off. The people came to the rescue, and so Karen Bass has been elected mayor of this city, and we will celebrate her here in Leimert Park on Saturday, December the 10th with Brian McKnight, KBLA, Club Nouveau, and you. In this hour, it is hardly a secret that mobility has always been limited, if not impossible, for black folk. Before the Civil War, masters confined their slaves to their property, while free black people found themselves regularly stopped, questioned, and even kidnapped. Restrictions on movement before emancipation carried over in different forms into Reconstruction and beyond. For most of the 20th century, many white Americans felt, how might I put this, blithely comfortable, denying black countrymen the right to travel freely on trains and on buses. But then came the automobile, and it made it much more difficult to shackle folk cruising along a highway at 45 miles per hour. I am pleased to have acclaimed historian Dr. Gretchen Soren on in this hour to talk about driving while black, African-American travel, and the road to civil rights. And if you've never considered what the automobile did for black freedom, we're going to consider it in this hour now that Dr. Soren joins us. How are you today? Good to have you on this program.
I'm fine. Thank you very much for having me.
It's my great delight to have you. Glad we got the hour to sort of unpack this. You heard me say a moment ago, of course, sort of describing what your text is all about. But I think most of us, including yours truly, frankly, had never really considered the role that the automobile played, at least in some level of freedom, of movement, when it comes to being black in America. Because, again, we've been constrained and confined in so many different kinds of scenarios. But the automobile sort of changed the game for us. Again, as I said, I never really thought about it in those terms. I am curious. I know you're obviously an historian, but what made you so curious and to consider this subject?
Well, you know what really got me started was when a colleague of mine handed me the cover of a Green Book. And this was 20 years ago. And I had never heard of the Green Book. And as a historian who had studied African-American history, I was really curious. I thought, what is this thing? The Negro Motorist Green Book. And I started doing research on the Green Book. And it dawned on me as I looked through this little tiny guide that's really big enough just to fit in your glove compartment, that the automobile, it was all about the automobile. It was about people going out on the road and traveling by automobile. And so I started doing some digging, and I started talking to people. And I talked to two generations. I talked to people who were my parents' generation. They were the people who were the drivers who were taking these car trips. And I talked to people who were my generation, who were the passengers in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And I wanted to kind of find out, well, did you use the Green Book and why did you use it? And what I discovered was there are all these books about the automobile and how important the automobile is in American life, how it changed American life. But nobody thought about what the automobile meant to African Americans, how it was different for African Americans, that if you were black, the automobile gave you incredible freedom because you didn't have to ride on the Jim Crow bus or the Jim Crow rail car. And so you could be the master of your own destiny. You could go where you wanted, when you wanted, and you didn't have to face the humiliation of people, spitting at you or yelling racial epithets, or even, sometimes you'd go to get on a bus and you'd pay your money in the front door, and they'd make you go to the back door. And when you went to the back door of the bus, they'd pull away. So they just take your money. There were even bus drivers that shot at people. There's a story about a black soldier and a white soldier during World War II who were sitting together on a bus, and the bus driver didn't like it. And he said, "I'm sorry, but you can't sit like that." And they said, No, we're friends. And he said, "No, you can't sit like that," and pulled out a gun. So there were all these instances where African Americans were not protected when they were on public conveyances. And also think of what that did to their children. You get on a bus and you're told, go sit in the back. You're not worth sitting in where you want to. You have to sit in the back of the bus. The humiliation for children was terrible for parents. They were feeling that their children were being completely demoralized and treated, like they were nothing.
Yeah.
And so you have your own car. You've got this metal box around you that's protecting you from all that humiliation, from all that danger, and it was an incredible, freeing opportunity for African Americans.
We take our automobiles for granted so much these days.
Yeah.
We get in our cars and go where we want to go. And again, I had never considered the ways in which the advent of the automobile really did allow for some freedom for those black folk who could afford the automobile. My mind, of course, goes to all the black folk in Detroit for years who were making cars that they couldn't afford to buy, making cars they couldn't afford to drive in. But it's a fascinating story to consider what it means to be driving while black in this country, to consider African-American travel and the road to civil rights. And so when we come forward with Dr. Gretchen Sorton, we'll talk more about that. We'll talk about the Green Book and a variety of other topics related to this notion of driving while black. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 wishes you a Christmas season that is merry and bright. Happy holidays.
Santa baby, just slip a sable under the tree for me.
Over 100 million people around the world have felt the thrill of Broadway's most spectacular musical, Disney's The Lion King. And now you can too. Experience this breathtaking theatrical event and see why the New York Times declares there is simply nothing else like it.
Give the gift that roars at the Pantages Theater, February 2nd through March 26th. Visit BroadwayInHollywood.com.
The Institute for Diversity Certification is all about the 3 Ds: dedication, determination, and discipline. Learn more about our globally recognized diversity certification program today by calling 1-800-983-6192. Again, 1-800-983-6192, or visit diversitycertification.org. As the #1 organization for certified diversity professionals and also certified diversity executive credentials, diversitycertification.org will provide an opportunity for you to demonstrate dedication to the field, determination to make progress, and more discipline to your process. Go today and learn more about the diversity certification system. Call 1-800-983-6192. Again, 1-800-983-6192. Or go to diversitycertification.org. That's diversitycertification.org. The standard of excellence, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Did you know addiction to drugs like meth or cocaine is a disease and not a choice? But getting help is. If you have stimulant use disorder, you, Your family and friends may have a lot of questions, including where to start. Choose Change California can help. Make a change today and find a proven treatment option for you at choosechangeca.org.
Where can you smell fresh pine from the curbside pickup line? Lowe's, actually. Explore the holiday fun and check off every gift on your list during Winterfest at Lowe's, where you can save $100 on a Blackstone 30-inch flat-top grill, now $299. Or your choice of a DeWalt 20-volt Max brushless drill kit or Impact driver kit for just $99. Experience all of the festivities of Winterfest now, only at Lowe's, home to any possibility. Offer valid through 12/21 while supplies last.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate meets a scholarly match.
I'm Tavis, Smiley. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580. Delighted to have you along with us in this hour of our program today, where we are featuring a conversation with Dr. Gretchen Soren. She's the author of the text Driving While Black, African American Travel and the Road to Civil Rights. Having this conversation now because the timing, to my mind, couldn't be more propitious. We are in the holiday season. You know what that means. Every year around this time, Thanksgiving through Christmas through New Year's, more Americans hit the road than at any other time during the year. The holiday travel season is in full flex this time of the year. And so many of us are hitting the road to take vacations, to visit family, of course, for the holidays. And so no better time to have a conversation about driving while black, it seems, than right about now. Before that break, Dr. Soren referenced the Green Book. I asked her what got her thinking about historians. Always amaze me because I'm always fascinated by what was gestating, what got them on the path to considering why they want to study this particular issue or write this particular text. And so I asked her that question moments ago in case you just tuned in, and her answer was the Green Book. She once was given a copy or saw a copy of the Green Book, and most of us know what that is now. If you didn't know what the Green Book was a few years ago, when the movie came out, Green Book, starring Mahershala Ali, which won, of course, for him an Academy Award for his role in that film, many of us came to be exposed to the Green Book, given the success of the film, and again, the Oscar that Mahershala took home that night for his fine role playing Dr. Don Shirley in that particular film. So her answer to how she got on this was the Green Book. I want to come back to that now, Dr. Soren, because I want to get you to sort of unpack how these black travel guides, and the Green Book was the biggest one, the most well-known one, it wasn't the only one, but how these black travel guides and these black-only businesses along the routes, along the ways, the highways and the byways, sort of encouraged a new way for black folk to resist oppression, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think that's absolutely perfect. And you know, it's so interesting that we had this whole world of African American businesses frequented by African American people all over the United States. And there were tourist homes, guest houses, hotels. There were luxury hotels, restaurants, roadhouses, nightclubs, all black owned, all black businesses. You know, these were, in some ways, with the end of segregation, we lost that. Mm-hmm. You know, we lost all those black businesses, not because black people completely stopped going to them, but because white people never did go to them. Mm-hmm. And so we lost that. And I think we're starting to get back to a sensitivity to black-owned businesses and saying, you know, let's buy from black-owned businesses. But that's something we lost when the Green Book and those because the Green Book gave free marketing to mom and pop businesses all over the United States that would never have had access to that kind of marketing. And you're absolutely right when you say that the Green Book was only one of dozens of these travel guides that listed businesses all over the United States that were welcoming to African Americans as they traveled.
Yep. You know as well as I do that even in this moment, in 2022, there are still consequences for driving while black. Those consequences range from being profiled to being pulled over to being harassed to being arrested to being murdered, quite frankly. Right. It's a broad range of what black folk have to endure, even in 2022, driving while black. We'll come to that in a second. But let me start though by asking what it was like for black folk back then, the Green Book notwithstanding, these welcoming and hospitable establishments owned by black people notwithstanding. I'm recalling places now like the Dunbar Hotel, of course, here in Los Angeles. I'm thinking of the Teresa Hotel in New York, in Harlem. I'm thinking of Pascal's in Atlanta. All places I've been in my career and stayed and just enjoyed good times in these locales in my own lifetime. But I'm wondering if you can give us a sense of what it was like for black people when they were able to afford an automobile and got on the road back then. We know the hell we still endure today, but even though they had the freedom to move around and they had their own vehicles, what were they met with when they got on the road?
But it was still dangerous.
Yes.
I mean, it was a way. You're absolutely right. It was a way of protest. The black middle class was going out on the road and they were saying, we're going to do it even though it's dangerous, and we're going to take our children. And I realized as I was working on the book that this was my story, because my parents were going from New Jersey back home to my mother's home in North Carolina every summer. And people never stopped if they didn't have to. If you could just stop at one black-owned business and just keep on driving, you wouldn't stop because you were afraid. You didn't know where people would be welcoming and where you might get shot or where you might get injured or where your car might be turned over. So generally, if you didn't have a guide, and there were lots of advertisements for black-owned businesses in the back of newspapers and magazines as well. So it wasn't just the travel guides. You wouldn't stop. You would keep driving, and you would carry everything you needed. You carried blankets and pillows in the car. You carried extra water in the car. In case you had to sleep in the car, you carried a cooler full of food. In case you had to be on the road and in case you couldn't find a place that was welcoming to eat, you would carry your food with you. And as my grandmother always said, you carry your pecan. You carry one of those big coffee cans, and you can pee in it if you need to. That's your bathroom, because African Americans were generally not allowed to use the bathrooms at gas stations, because that's where the bathrooms were, except for Esso, which is now Exxon. Esso had a policy of allowing African Americans to use their bathrooms. And it was because the Rockefellers who owned Esso, later Exxon, were Baptists, religious Baptists, and they supported civil rights. And they allowed black people to use the bathrooms. That's why so many black people swore by Esso gas.
It's amazing the things that build loyalty. If you allow me to use the bathroom, I'll buy gas at your gas station. That kind of goes hand in hand. I am mad at Esso or Exxon, and I am mad at black folk for loving on some Exxon because of the way that they were allowed back in the day to use their facilities to relieve themselves. Give me some sense of again. I'm having this conversation now because again we're in that season where everybody's on the road, and we take driving so much for granted these days. We've got navigation systems and all kind of stuff that make driving easy and fun for us these days. TVs in the back seat for kids to watch. I mean, all this stuff didn't exist, of course, all those years ago. But when it comes to affordability, so we had the freedom to drive while black. But what was the affordability issue like for black people who wanted to be owners of vehicles?
Well, one of the important things was, and this kind of ties the automobile to so many other aspects of black culture, African Americans were often prohibited by redlining from buying houses, right? And so if you can't buy a house, but you're starting to have more disposable income because you've got a good job, or you're working in Detroit, you're working for the automobile manufacturers or whatever, you have extra disposable money, you're going to put that disposable money into a car because that's the second largest purchase. So a lot of African Americans who were prohibited from buying real estate, from buying homes because of the collusion between realtors and banks, they put that extra money into cars. And so, white folks would make fun of black people for having a Cadillac or having a fancy car. Well, you could have a fancy car if you couldn't buy a house. Right, because you put that money into a car. So people didn't buy Cadillacs because they wanted to show off necessarily. They bought Cadillacs and big, heavy cars like big Buicks because they thought they were safer, because they were big and they were heavy and they were less likely to be turned over. And also, if you were Mahalia Jackson or you or Sammy Davis Jr. or you were Aretha Franklin, you could afford a Cadillac because you made a lot of money, and there was no reason that you needed to apologize because you had a Cadillac.
I'm glad you went there. You're a mind reader in addition to being an acclaimed historian, because I was just about to make that turn, and so I'm gonna follow you because I'm gonna follow you on this road. Pardon the pun, as we drive while we're black in this conversation on this Black Talk station. But I wanted to go there because we were talking earlier about the loyalty that black people had for years to Exxon, formerly Esso. Because back in the day when Negroes were able to get cars and drive, Esso was the only gas station that allowed black people to use their facilities, their restrooms. Yep. And there have been so many jokes over the years, and the only person that's the person laughing the loudest is Cadillac, because they made so much money from black folk then and even now. But I wanted to ask you about the loyalty that black people had then and again, even today in some respects, to certain brands. And these brands have made a great deal of money off of black people. I'm talking now just about automobiles. I could do this for hours talking about other brands, but there are certain brands that black people have been loyal to for decades. Where did the thing with black folk and Cadillac start? Where did that come from?
That's a really terrific question. I think it comes from I think people saw Cadillac as a luxury brand, right? A luxury brand for white, just a luxury brand. In the beginning, Cadillac was not interested in having black people drive Cadillacs.
I'm sure.
In fact, they tried to prohibit black people from buying Cadillacs because they didn't want black people to be seen in their cars. So they were not particularly welcoming to black people buying Cadillacs. But African Americans saw the Cadillac and the Buick as a luxury brand and a safe brand, a brand that was heavy. And one of the things that was so interesting about automobiles was that the black newspapers did studies, and we know that more people bought Buicks than any other kind of car. More black people bought Buicks. And they bought Buicks because they were seen both as a luxury brand, but also as one of the safer cars. And for black people, safety was paramount. What is the car that you can't turn over if you encounter an angry mob? Right. What is the car that you can fit all your stuff in, that has a really big trunk, and you can fit the blankets and pillows, the cooler, the extra water, the extra fan belt, all your suitcases, all that stuff you needed to carry? What's got a big enough trunk? So for black people, the reasons for choosing a car were different than for white people.
Isn't that fascinating? I'm sitting here listening to you talk, and white people would never, back then or now, go out and buy a car for the same reason as black people. We had our own unique reasons. We wanted safety. We wanted security. We don't want the car, as you said, turned over if an angry mob comes our way. We need trunk space big enough for all the stuff we got to put in the car, because we can't get out unless we get to an Exxon. We can't go nowhere. We may be sleeping in this car by the side of the road. So all of these issues and this list of items that black people had to check off when they decided what kind of car they want to buy is just arresting for me, because again, nobody outside of us would ever think about that list of rationale for why we're going to purchase car X over car Y. But I take it more ahead in this conversation with Dr. Gretchen Soren. The book is called Driving While Black: African American Travel and the Road to Civil Rights. We'll talk about that road to civil rights when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Mike Moore, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. A Starbucks employee is suspended after a black woman had monkey written as her name on her order. Now, this happened in Annapolis, Maryland, the week before Thanksgiving. The woman's actual name is Monique. She said her heart dropped when she saw monkey written on her drink. That eventually led to a discussion with a male barista who said it was a mistake. African-American rapper Kanye West is hoping to revive his shutdown Donda Academy as he looks for an alternative location to house the school in California. According to TMZ, Kanye is negotiating with the pastor of Cornerstone Christian Church in Northridge to lease some of his church space for the Donda Academy. Pastor Ronald Nagin claims he's had 3 meetings with the rapper in the past month, and the church's lawyers are currently writing a contract to send to Kanye. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
A wreck clearing now on the 60 westbound before the 605. A big rig and another vehicle involved, and they've cleared things out of lanes off to the right shoulder. You're seeing a little slowdown still on the 405 southbound. That's heavy from the 101 down to Getty Center. Work still underway in Sylmar, 210 westbound between Hubbard Street and the 5.
Need an accident attorney by your side? All you got to do is call the accident guys.
Injured in a car accident or at work? The accident guys have helped over 5,000 injured clients with an impressive winning record.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers got a strong performance from LeBron James in a 17-point win over Portland. LeBron had 31 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds. The Lakers are 6-2 in their last 8 games. The Clippers lose by 13 at Utah. The anti-Semitic documentary that got Kyrie Irving in trouble is still available on Amazon. Despite public pressure, Amazon CEO Andy Jassy said he is not removing the controversial film from the company's website. Rams defensive end Aaron Donald has a high ankle sprain and will not play in Sunday's home game against Seattle. This will be the first game Donald has missed due to an injury in his 9-year career. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by MVP Accident Attorneys. When it comes to your settlement, we're slam dunk. Call 833-MVP-WINS or check their website at themvp.com for a free case review.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call on me, your MVP.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Maisha Cairo here for KBLA Talk 1580. We're live in Los Angeles at JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. And I'm speaking to some of the attendees today to see why it was so important for them to be here.
I find it important to be here as a business owner and entrepreneur because I want some more capital and I'm not really a fan of loans. So it's really interesting to see how people have gained wealth and what different spaces to advance my money in, whether it be stocks, digital.
And why do you think it's important for a company like Chase to promote building generational wealth in Black and brown communities?
I mean, it's important to me as one of the biggest banks in the world to promote Black wealth because most banks don't really, in my opinion, care about the money that I'm spending as they would, opposed to a white counterpart that might have the same dollar amount in their accounts.
Well, you can bet on Chase offering insights on financial health, the path to home ownership, and entrepreneurship. It's the Chase Advancing Black Wealth Tour.
According to the National Black Justice Institute, a majority of Black LGBTQ plus students experience harassment in school because of their sexual orientation, gender expression, and racial identity. This reality is compounded by the fact there are few safe, affirming spaces for Black LGBTQ plus middle and high school youth in our communities. On December 3rd, 2022, African American LGBTQ plus youth from the ages 14 to 18 are invited to participate in a fun and culturally enriching youth retreat at the Stone View Nature Center in Culver City from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. The event will focus on mental health, social justice leadership, safe space creation, yoga, music, drumming, and art making. Breakfast, lunch, and gift items will be provided to all youth participants. For more information, check out the event website at womensleadershipla.org or call 323-304-9578.
Health is Wealth and Medicare and Covered California's open enrollment for medical insurance is here. RHJ Insurance Agency can help you find affordable rates and the plan that's just right for you and your family. Call 562-204-6120 for your free quote. Don't leave your health to chance. Open enrollment is here and affordable coverage is just a phone call away. Call 562-204-6120 for your free quote and get the coverage you need. Go to www.rhjins.com.
Looking for legitimate political discourse without the bear spray? Tune in and speak out. KBLA Talk 1580.
Our guest is Dr. Gretchen Soren. I'm Tavis Smiley, and this is KBLA Talk 1580. In case you missed our announcement earlier today, you want to be sure that you join us on Saturday, December the 10th, for our Welcome Home Mayor-elect Karen Bass event here in historic Leimert Park. If you want to be a vendor, spaces are going fast. info@smileyAudiomedia.com. Hit us up. Send us an email to info@smileyAudiomedia.com. We'll get you all the details you need. Just send us an email once again to info@smileyAudiomedia.com. All the info you need will come right back to you about being a vendor here in Leimert Park for our Welcome Home Mayor-elect Karen Bass event, Saturday, December 10th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And earlier in today's program, we announced some of the lineup of great artists who will be performing live on stage as we celebrate with Karen Bass, who will join us live on stage at 11 a.m. straight up. We don't do nothing on CP time. We're going to start right at 11 a.m. She'll hit the stage 11 o'clock on Saturday, December 10th. But prior to her and after her, you're going to hear performances from Brian McKnight, Guapale, and Club Nouveau. Those are the ones we announced today. A little something for everybody. It's going to be a grand celebration here in Leimert Park for our new mayor, Karen Bass, the first woman and only the second African-American to be the chief executive of this city. So come out and join KBLA Talk 1580, Saturday, December 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Karen Bass on stage at 11 a.m. for our Karen Bass event. So look forward to seeing you there. Continuing now our conversation in this holiday season of travel with Dr. Gretchen Soren. Her book is called Driving While Black, which many of us will be doing, have already started doing since Thanksgiving. But over the holiday season, we're all on the road. So many of us will be driving while black. The book is called that. The subtitle, African American Travel and the Road to Civil Rights. We'll get to that part in a second here. But Dr. Soren, you'll appreciate this. This is what you do when you write a great book like yours and give me the makings of a great conversation. I was checking our social media stuff and all kinds of commentary I've been reading during the break. And here in the studio, my producers come in, JD and I were talking about this conversation, and I think we're all feeling the same way, that you really don't consider all of the things that black people have to process and endure and navigate, pardon the pun, when they're figuring out how to make a particular purchase. And the part of our conversation that we were just having, about the ways in which we make decisions really apparently seems to have resonated with our listening audience. Reading one comment here, this is fascinating, Tavis. The things our minds or our ancestors' minds have to grapple with is indeed arresting, particularly and especially from a protection and survival perspective. Nobody really thinks about those kinds of things when they're making purchases like we do, but I just wanted to underscore that seems to have resonated with our audience.
And African Americans lived in a world that was totally unknown to whites. And yet the white world was known to African Americans because we worked in it. We worked as maids, we worked as butlers, we worked as chauffeurs. We knew all about the white world, but the white world didn't know anything about what it meant to be black in this country, and probably still don't.
I get that. Let me flip it completely here. Were there horror stories about this period when black people were able to move freely because they had vehicles?
Yes. And there's one story, it actually takes place, it starts out in California. A young boy, he's 9 years old, and he's with his aunt and uncle in a car, and they're going to a funeral in Florida, I think, or Texas, and they're driving through Texas, and very early, the family makes a wrong turn, and they end up driving through Waco. And as they're going through Waco, they're driving very slowly because there's a whole crowd. They see this big crowd, and they wonder what's going on, so they're peering out the windows, and they realize there's a black man about to be burned, about to be set on fire. So we have a lynching in process, and this black family sees it, and somebody yells out, There's some more of them. Get them. Let's get them. And everybody runs for their cars and trucks. Well, this guy, of course, has this big old car, and he's got to do a K-turn really fast with this big car and turn around. And the family basically spent the night hiding outside of town in a field with their car so that they wouldn't also be lynched. So there were dangers. There were real dangers when you went out on the road in your car. The upshot of the story is that the parent, his aunt and uncle couldn't read, and so they couldn't read the road signs. First thing they did when they got back home was sign up to take reading lessons, because that if you couldn't read, that could be very dangerous.
No,
you had to be able to read those signs.
No, it could be deadly. It could be deadly, not just dangerous as you mentioned, but deadly.
Exactly.
And you parallel that, which I want to do right now. You parallel that to the fact now that in all of our cars we have these navigation systems, and you don't have to read anything. You just type something in, type in the address where you're headed, and it takes you there. So again, we take so many things for granted in the lives that we live these days that our ancestors could not take for granted. If they couldn't read, you turn the wrong way, and you end up about to be lynched or worse yet, dead. And we just punch buttons nowadays, and it tells us our car base. And not even just that, you ain't got to drive no more. You can type in where you want to go and sit back and let the car drive you there. So it's a different world, as they say, from where we came from.
It's a totally different world.
Totally different world. But what do you make of the parallel between then and now? The obvious question, I'm sure you saw this coming. What do you make of the parallel between the hell that they were enduring for risking driving while black then, and the hell that we still endure today for driving while black?
Well, I think there's a systemic problem here. And I'm not going to say all police are bad, because all police are not bad, but we are still dealing with a police presence that can be very dangerous. And there are 17,000 police departments, all independent in this country. And some of them are good, and some of them are dangerous. And I think you don't know. You do not know when you're driving across country what you're going to encounter. And we know that the NAACP has basically said, do not drive in Missouri. Don't go there. Don't drive there.
Yeah.
Don't vacation there. If you're black, it's not a safe place to be. And that's terrifying that in 2022, the NAACP has to basically issue a travel advisory for black people.
Yeah, I was just about to say, that in addition to that fine point you just made, that even beyond Missouri, as you well know, there are certain parts of certain states and certain cities that today, even though you have the freedom to go there and you're driving a nice, fine vehicle, you don't want to be there after dark, even today.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't want to be in South Boston after dark, and I can name a bunch of other places you don't want to be black driving after dark in this country. But to your point, for the NAACP to put out a travel advisory to Negroes, you might not want to get caught driving in Missouri. That's damning in 2022, Dr. Sarr.
It's frightening. And the problem is you don't necessarily know. You don't know what places are going to have a little small police department that might be dangerous. You don't know exactly where you might be more likely to be stopped. And this whole problem with police law enforcement, just because they see you, they're scared because they see a black face. They're scared of black people just because they see a black face, because there's no familiarity, or they buy into the racism of the country, and there you are.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you address that?
We mentioned earlier that there were, we were talking earlier about black loyalty, and one of the reasons that black people for years loved Exxon, formerly Esso, is because it was the only place you could stop on the road, and they'd allow you to use the restrooms to sort of relieve yourself. We talked about the loyalty that black people have to Cadillac and Buick, even to this very day, because of the cars that they sold us then, and the way those cars gave us the kind of hedge of protection, if you will, that we needed as we traveled across the country. When we come forward, there are other loyalties that black people developed, and I want to talk about that, about these black businesses, and specifically these hotels, the Teresa Hotel in New York, the Hampton House in Miami, the Dunbar here in Los Angeles, these great restaurants, Dookie Chase in New Orleans, and Pasco's in Atlanta, and many of these places I've had a chance to, again, spend time at in my own career, my own travel. But I want to talk about that side, because that's a beautiful side for me, the ways in which black people supported these institutions, these businesses, and the ways in which they were able to thrive and survive for years. Some of these places are still in business to this very day because black people visited and frequented and put their money down in these locales. And that's a beautiful thing for me. Black people supporting black people. We'll talk about that when we come forward with Dr. Gretchen Soren on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
3 Bay Area counties have black women chief prosecutors. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News, brought to you by CaliforniaBlackMedia.org. Civil rights attorney Pamela Price made history when she was elected Alameda County's first African-American district attorney. Price joins 2 other black women, Contra Costa County DA Diana Becton and San Francisco DA Brooke Jenkins, holding the same office in their Bay Area counties. Price is the 5th black woman to be elected district attorney in California. Former DAs on the list are Vice President Kamala Harris, who was San Francisco's DA from 2004 to 2010, and Jackie Lacey, who was Los Angeles County's DA for 2 terms from 2012 to 2020. KBLA listeners, what are your thoughts on these offices being held by black women? Let us know on all social media platforms at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
On Saturday, December 3rd, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., come out and enjoy a free community health fair, co-sponsored by Pleasant Hill Baptist Church Health Ministry and the Central Neighborhood Health Foundation. The fair will be held on the church grounds at 2009 West Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, with free health screenings, refreshments, jumpers for the kids, a visit from Santa, entertainment with a DJ, free food giveaway for the first 100 people who attend, as well as raffles and other prizes. There will also be open enrollment health insurance representatives present. Attendees can get free blood pressure, glucose, HIV and STD testing, a dental screening, fluoride varnish, COVID testing, vaccines and boosters. Flu shots will also be offered. Housing navigation, mental health support, and education services will be available. Don't miss this free community health fair. Tell somebody and receive the gift of preventative health services this season. See you all on Saturday, December 3rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at 2009 West Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Los Angeles.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Dr. Soren, talk to me about all these fine black dining facilities and these great hotels that survived and thrived because as black folk had the freedom to drive while black and hit the roads. Many of these institutions still around today.
Absolutely, especially I think one of my favorites is Dookie Chase's.
Yes.
In New Orleans. It's fantastic, and President Obama went and ate there. There were across the country, primarily on the East Coast and the West Coast.
Yep.
I would say as far west as Chicago, there was kind of a big area after Chicago that didn't have very many places, and then of course the West Coast had quite a few. But there were tourist homes, guest houses, resorts, resort communities, restaurants, hotels, and these were not dumps. The one thing, the argument I have with the movie, The Green Book, is that the places that they showed in The Green Book were pretty tacky places.
Yeah.
When we know that there were luxury hotels, we know that there were fine dining restaurants. There were places that were just amazing representations of black history and culture, nightclubs. But the Green Book also listed businesses like black-owned pharmacies, black-owned soda fountains, black-owned, dentists and doctors, beauty parlors and barbershops. So there were places that you could get services as well as something to eat or a place to stay.
Yeah.
And there were the resorts, I think, were particularly wonderful, but beaches, because of course beaches we know were segregated.
Yeah.
So there were beaches on both coasts that were reserved for black. One is Bruce's Beach in California.
That's right.
Which I think they just gave that was taken by eminent domain.
That is correct.
Because people did not want black people to have that coastal area, and I think it was just given back. I think last year.
That's correct. No, we are obviously, this radio station is flagship here in Southern California, in Los Angeles, and we know that story well. We all know Bruce's Beach. We've all been there, and the story of of what happened to get that land back to the family is a story well known here in the state of California and across the country. Now there are other lawyers. I was in conversation with one set of lawyers the other day. There are other lawyers, black lawyers across the country now, who are fighting for other African Americans to get back stuff that was stolen from them. And they are inspired by what happened with the Bruce's Beach case here. Our own Reva Martin is now fighting for black and brown families in Palm Springs to get back, to get restitution for their land, their property being burned down by the city of Palm Springs because they wanted this particular area. Never mind eminent domain. They came in with bulldozers and just leveled the place and burned houses down. And so Reva Martin, one of our hosts here on this station, is a fine lawyer, a civil rights lawyer, and she is on that case right now on behalf of black and brown families in Palm Springs. So you're right. These stories are interesting and unique to our experience in this place called America. And Bruce's Beach, a great example of places that were, earmarked and identified for African Americans, and some folks just didn't like that. Let me say right quick, since you mentioned Dookie Chase, one, I'm hungry just thinking about Dookie Chase. But I've always loved. I said this the other day in a speech. If you gave me a chance to talk to and interview a young person versus an older person, ain't hating on young folk. I was once young myself, but I love talking to those who are chronologically gifted, because the wisdom that they can impart is so rich and so beautiful. And so I would never go to New Orleans as long as she lived without going by Dookie Chase to see Miss Leah Chase, the owner of that fine establishment. And I would sit and talk to her for hours sometimes while she's, popping peas and literally until she died, she was in that restaurant making sure that the food tasted the way she wanted to taste. So I love the fact that I lived long enough, and I should say that she lived long enough for me to become friends with Leah Chase at Dookie Chase. And in Atlanta, for years, I would stay until they got rid of it. I would stay at Pascal's for years for three reasons. One, because Dr. King is my hero, and as you know, Pascal's is the place where all the black civil rights leaders would meet in Atlanta. When they had meetings, they'd go to Pascal's for their meetings and for lunch or dinner. So there's so much history in the restaurant in Pascal's Hotel. Secondly, I stayed. Go ahead. No. Secondly, I stayed there.
I was just going to say you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Because all of these places, many of these places, were places that facilitated the civil rights.
That's right. I stayed there. Secondly, because Mr. Pascal, one of the brothers, was still living, and I developed a friendship with him. So I always wanted to go support him. These guys lived a long time. And thirdly, I stayed at Pascal's. Here's the good reason: because Pascal's is the only place in the country where you could get greens and pork chops and fried chicken and chitlins and yams on the room service menu. Why? It's a black-owned restaurant. Dr. Gretchen Soren on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where we turn red lights to green lights and keep it moving.
At Cedars-Sinai, we're honored to be named the #1 hospital in California and the #2 hospital in the nation in U.S. News & World Report's Best Hospitals Honor Roll. We're also proud to be named #1 in 6 specialties in Los Angeles. Thank you to our physicians, nurses, academic leaders, and thousands of other team members who bring their best to Cedars-Sinai every day. Learn more about our top-ranked care at cedars-sinai.org.
KBLA Talk 1580 invites you to join us in celebrating the season of giving by being part of the solution. As we enjoy great food, family, warmth, and well wishes in whatever our festive tradition may be, we share the beauty of the season by reaching out to the less fortunate. Please help us to help others with the KBLA Cover the Houseless Cozy Community Coat and Blanket Drive. All you have to do is drop off new or clean, gently used winter coats and blankets in the KBLA lobby during business hours. Now through December 20th, all of the coats and blankets will be donated to unsheltered individuals and families experiencing houselessness. Simply bring your donation to 4434 Crenshaw Boulevard in Los Angeles, near Vernon Avenue, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays. That's 4434 Crenshaw in historic Leimert Park. During the holidays and every day, let's remember, we keep us safe. We keep us warm. We are the safety net. And together, we can cover the unsheltered. Get caught up in the spirit of the season, the spirit of love. Make a difference with your friends at KBLA Talk 1580.
Life is uncertain.
It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. It's normal. With CalHope's free and secure mental health resources, it's easy to get the help you and your loved ones need when you need it the most. Call our warm line at 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org today.
Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
Let's unpack a bit more. Dr. Gretchen Soren, author of the book Driving While Black, African-American Travel and the Road to Civil Rights. I got about 3 or 4 minutes left, Dr. Soren. Let me come back to the point you put your finger on a moment ago, and that is this subtitle, African-American Travel and the Road to Civil Rights. Talk to me about the, pardon the pun, the intersection of civil rights and black folk having access to automobiles.
Well, I would argue that the civil rights movement could not have happened when it did without the automobile, and for 2 reasons. One is, if you think about the Montgomery bus boycott, the only way that you could boycott those buses was so people had to be able to get to work. And the way they got to work was that Dr. King purchased a fleet of cars, and he used those cars to drive people to work so they could get to their places of employment. Those cars made it possible for them to bankrupt the Montgomery buses. Also, if you think about what happens, so when civil rights leaders would fly into southern cities, they'd be at the airport and they were stuck there. You could not get a cab because the cabs were segregated. So you had to get a black cab, but black cabs were prohibited from picking people up at the airports. So what did black people do? Well, they rented a car. This is car rentals are just beginning to happen at this time period. And they were able to rent cars so they could get to their hotels or get to their churches, get wherever they needed to get for the civil rights movement. Without that, they'd be stuck at the airport because a white cab would not pick them up. So cars were essential.
No, they were essential, but beyond essential, I'm just tickled. Big smile on my face here for those who are watching me on the live stream. I'm smiling because the ingenuity of black people never ceases to amaze me. The ingenuity of our people, Dr. Soren. When you, and I know this story well, of course, I've written a book about Dr. King, but when you laid that out so beautifully, that King and those in Montgomery knew that to beat that bus system and to win the right for black folk to sit wherever they wanted on the bus, Rosa Parks and beyond, they had to do something when these black folk couldn't ride the bus to work. And for them to pool their resources and to buy a fleet of cars to get folk to work for those months while they were boycotting that bus, that's just the best of black brilliance to me.
It is. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I just love that story, knowing what they did to make sure they had the resources available to get these black folk to work, because they couldn't lose their jobs over the boycott, but they had to get to work. And just a brilliant idea. And to your point about black people renting cars because they wouldn't let the black cabs pick up people at the airport. I mean, just the things that we have had to do. We are an amazing people. We are an amazing people, and this conversation has just underscored that for me. Never mind the challenges we face driving while black, we are an amazing people. The book is called Driving While Black, African-American Travel and the Road to Civil Rights. Its author is acclaimed historian Dr. Gretchen Soren, who I've enjoyed so much having on this program. Dr. Soren, thank you for your work and witness. Good to have you here.
And thank you so much, and thank you for your radio program. It's terrific.
I thank you for saying that. For those of you who are getting in your automobiles and driving while black during the holiday season, be safe, be careful, and be aware. There are still, as we discussed in this hour, risk to driving while black. That's our show for today. Thanks for tuning in to all 3 hours. Back here tomorrow morning. Well, not really. Tomorrow's Friday, so it's the best of Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580. 3 great hours from this week that you might not have heard. Don't miss the mashup tomorrow, the best of Tavis Smiley, 9 a.m. to 12 noon Pacific time here on KBLA Talk 1580. Time now for the KBLA Midday Money Chain. Up next, the Millionaires Roundtable with Lynn Richardson, followed by Naja's program, Ahead of the Crypto Curve. Old money, new money, it don't matter. We got you covered here on KBLA Talk 1580. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, keep the faith.